A lonely millionaire CEO, after losing his family in a tragic accident, adopts 5 children no one wanted, rejected by everyone. They grow up under his care, but not everything goes smoothly. Years later, after the CEO disappears from public life, those same kids do something unimaginable in his name, and when the world finds out what they did, it breaks hearts globally. But the question remains, did they do it out of love or guilt? Before starting the story, make sure to subscribe the channel so that you don't miss any update in future. He walked past the orphanage gates in a designer suit, but his eyes? Broken, hollow, like he hadn't slept in years. Outside, children were running, laughing. But 5 of them? They sat in a corner, bruised, quiet, unwanted. They didn't even flinch when the gate creaked open, because they knew no one ever came for them. And yet, he stopped, right in front of them. His voice cracked when he spoke. "How long have you been here?" The oldest boy, maybe 12, didn't even look up. Long enough to stop counting. The man, Ryan Cross, was a billionaire CEO. Headlines had once called him the Cold King of Silicon Avenue. But they didn't know what happened to him the year before, when he lost his wife, his only son, in a crash so brutal he never stepped foot in his mansion again. That day, he was just wandering. But something about these kids, it pulled him in like gravity. He sat on the cracked cement beside them, took off his coat. The smallest child, barely 5, looked up through matted bangs. Her lip was split. She whispered, "Are you lost too?" And Ryan, swallowing the lump in his throat, nodded. "Yes, I think I am." That evening, the staff was stunned. He didn't just adopt 1 or 2. He signed papers for all 5. "You don't understand," the director gasped. "They've been rejected a dozen times. Behavioral issues, trauma. One of them set a room on fire last year." "I don't care," Ryan interrupted. "They're coming home with me." But it wasn't a home. Not yet. The mansion was cold, silent, covered in white sheets. A ghost of a place that once held joy. The kids didn't know where to sit, where to sleep. They'd never seen a staircase that curved like a ribbon, or marble floors so polished they could see their faces, faces they didn't want to look at. The youngest boy, Leo, kept asking if they'd be sent back. The second oldest, Mariah, whispered to the others, "He's rich. He'll get bored of us." But Ryan didn't walk away. Not even when Lucas screamed at him for touching his backpack. Not even when Mariah shattered a vase, or when Tessa locked herself in a bathroom for 3 hours sobbing. Instead, he learned how to listen. How to sit in silence with a child who didn't trust the world anymore. He brought therapists into the house, not in suits, but in sneakers and t-shirts. People who played games and sat cross-legged on floors. He canceled board meetings to attend school plays. He learned how to braid Tessa's hair. He stitched Leo's torn backpack himself, the one no one ever cared to fix. Years passed. The cold mansion began to echo with laughter again. Lucas, once filled with rage, learned to build. He dismantled his first toaster at 14 and designed his first smart device at 16. Mariah became obsessed with law, fighting for those no one heard. Tessa danced. Every step she took felt like she was shaking off the ghosts of her past. Leo? He just smiled now. And that was enough. But there was one Aiden. The quiet one. The boy who hadn't said a word the day Ryan found him. Even now, years later, he barely spoke. But he watched everything, closely, like he was waiting for something. Then one night, Ryan vanished. No goodbye. No note. Nothing. One moment, he was there humming in the kitchen, burnt toast in the toaster. The next, gone. The house fell silent again. Mariah called hospitals. Lucas hacked into traffic cams. Tessa posted online. Leo cried himself to sleep. Aiden? He just stared at Ryan's chair at the head of the dining table and whispered. He said he wouldn't leave us. Weeks passed, then months. And one rainy night, a letter arrived. No return address. Just 5 names on the front, handwritten in shaky ink. Inside was a single line. "I never wanted to be your hero. I just hoped I'd be enough." Enclosed was a map to a place none of them had ever heard of, and something else. A key. Aiden looked up at his siblings and said his first full sentence in years. "We have to find him." The four others froze, because they knew exactly what he meant. Ryan wasn't missing. He was testing them. They stared at the map like it was a message from a ghost. Faded lines. Smudged corners. An old estate circled in red somewhere in the middle of nowhere. A small town called Whitestone, where none of them had ever been. Tessa was the first to speak. "It's him. He wants us to follow." Mariah shook her head. "Or he's gone. And this is just his way of saying goodbye." "No," Aiden said softly, almost a whisper. "He wouldn't leave us without a reason." It was strange, hearing Aiden speak with such certainty. The same boy who barely spoke a word for years now looked clear. Like whatever pain he carried was pushing him towards something inevitable. So they packed, not knowing if they were chasing hope or running from the ache in their chests. 5 siblings. Grown now, but still carrying scars, some visible, some buried so deep they didn't even have names. The journey wasn't smooth. Leo got carsick. Tessa fought with Mariah about directions. Lucas wouldn't stop checking his phone for updates from the company he built, a tech startup that had taken off faster than he ever imagined. But Aiden just stared out the window, holding the letter like it was keeping him alive. As they neared Whitestone, something strange happened. Their phones lost signal. The GPS froze, and the road narrowed into a gravel path lined with fog-covered trees. No one spoke. Then it appeared. An old house. Nothing like the mansion they grew up in. This one was older, timeless, like it had existed before they were born. The windows were cracked, the wood warped from rain and wind. But the key fit. Inside, dust hung in the air like memories. But there were signs. A half-drunk cup of tea. A journal open on a table. A chair pulled out, as if someone had just stood up and walked away. Tessa walked to the mantel, her fingers trembling. There it was. A picture. The 5 of them, younger. Laughing, arms around each other. And beside them, Ryan. Smiling in a way none of them had seen in years. Like he'd been whole, even if just for that one captured moment. Then they noticed the letters. 5 of them. 1 for each child. They sat around the old wooden table in silence. No one reached first. Then Aiden stepped forward. He read his out loud. "Aiden, I never asked you to speak. I just wanted you to feel safe being quiet. But your silence always said more than words ever could. You saw me, not as a CEO, not as a savior, but as a man. And I saw you too, not as broken, but waiting. And I'm sorry I left before you were ready." His hands shook, but his voice didn't. "Leo, read next. Leo, you smiled even when you were scared. You brought light into rooms that had no windows. You made this house a home. I wish I could have told you more often how much your laughter saved me." Mariah's was longer. "Mariah, you challenged everything, even me. Especially me. And you were right to. You reminded me that love isn't obedience. It's freedom. Thank you for never letting me settle into comfort when I owed you more." Lucas swallowed hard. "Lucas, you wanted answers. And when you didn't get them, you made your own. You're a builder. But more than that, you're a protector. I saw it every time you stood in front of your siblings like a shield. I'm proud of the man you've become." Then Tessa, you moved like music. Even when your world was silent. You brought rhythm into pain, grace into grief. I watched you become the heartbeat of this family. There was no letter from Ryan about why he left. No clue what he was running from or toward. But something changed that night. Each of them felt it, not closure, but ignition. A calling. The next morning, Aiden found it. A hidden door in the floorboards of the hallway, leading down into a basement none of them knew existed. There wasn't much inside. A trunk. And inside that trunk, hundreds of envelopes. Letters. All addressed. All stamped. Never sent. Each one written to people the 5 siblings had long forgotten. A teacher who once told Lucas he'd end up in jail. A neighbor who crossed the street to avoid Mariah and her attitude. A school nurse who once told Leo's caseworker that these kids can't be helped. Ryan had written to them all. Not with anger, but with stories. He told them how wrong they were. He told them who his kids had become. How Lucas built a tech empire that now employed people from shelters. How Mariah won her first court case defending a mother who'd lost custody for being poor, not unfit. How Tessa opened a dance school for children with trauma. How Leo hosted joy clinics in children's hospitals. He even wrote about Aiden, the boy who never spoke, but always noticed. He taught me how to see again, one letter said. He reminded me that healing isn't loud. They read until their eyes burned. He hadn't left because he gave up on them. He left because he wanted the world to see what he saw. And now, it was their turn. They stood in that old house, the air thick with tears and resolve. Mariah folded the letters gently. We can't keep this to ourselves. Lucas nodded. No. We finish what he started. Aiden looked at the map again. Another red circle. A new place. And in the corner, a line scribbled hastily. Where it all began. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. They weren't just 5 kids he saved. They were the legacy he left behind. And now, they were about to show the world what unwanted children can become when someone finally chooses them. The new red circle on the map pointed to a place so small, it didn't even appear on most GPS apps. They drove for hours through winding hills and narrow, cracked roads until they reached it, a broken-down community center on the edge of an old mining town. Everything around them looked abandoned. Windows boarded. Walls graffitied. The only sound was the wind rustling through dry leaves. Leo stepped out first, squinting at the sign. Winslow Shelter for Displaced Families, he read aloud. This place looks like it's been dead for years. Mariah walked ahead, running her fingers along the rusted gate. It hasn't been dead, she said. Just forgotten. They broke the lock with Lucas's toolkit and stepped inside. Dust exploded in the air like it was exhaling after holding its breath for decades. The floor creaked under every step. On the far wall, faded murals showed stick figures holding hands, painted in colors long dulled by time. Tessa stopped in the middle of the room. She looked around slowly. This was our first home, she whispered. Everyone froze. She pointed to a peeling corner of the wall, a name written in blue crayon. Aiden. Her voice cracked. We were here before the orphanage. They started to remember. Bits and pieces. A cot. A cold hallway. A woman's voice yelling down the corridor. Mariah remembered hiding under a blanket. Leo remembered crying for food. Ryan had found the beginning. The place where they were first abandoned. But why? Why bring them back here? The answer came from a filing cabinet in the back room. Aiden found it. Locked, rusted shut. But Lucas pried it open. Inside were folders. Dozens of them. Records. Reports. Photos. And hidden behind a false bottom, a flash drive. They gathered around Aiden's laptop. The screen flickered, then lit up. And Ryan's face appeared. It was a video. Not polished. Not rehearsed. Just him sitting in that same dusty room, speaking like he wasn't sure who would ever watch it. If you're seeing this, he began, then it means I did it. I got you all here. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready. He looked older. More tired. But his eyes still carried that same fire. You probably have questions. About why I left. About why I didn't say goodbye. The truth is, I didn't want you to follow me until you were strong enough to lead. He paused. Then he held up a thin manila envelope. This shelter? It wasn't just your past. It was mine too. Silence fell over the room. Ryan continued. I grew up here. That's the part one never told you. My mother brought me here when I was 7. We stayed for 3 years. She died in that back room after an overdose. Mariah gasped softly. Ryan's voice shook. No one came for me either. I know what it's like to be unwanted. That's why I knew I couldn't just rescue you. I had to raise you into rescuers. He looked away from the camera for a moment, then back. But this place, it's more than history. It's a crime scene. He pulled a paper from the envelope. This shelter took money, government grants, donations, millions, and used less than half of it on the children. The rest? Gone. Pocketed. Hidden. Kids like you, they were starved, neglected, lost. Like I was. Like you were. He leaned closer. And I couldn't let it happen again. Tessa covered her mouth. Ryan whispered now. I bought this property quietly. Cleaned up the trails. Built the paper trail. The evidence is here. Everything you need to expose what happened. He took a deep breath. But I didn't want to be the one to do it, because if I did, they'd say it was about vengeance. A billionaire seeking revenge. But if you do it, it's truth. It's justice. He looked directly into the camera. You are the only ones who can finish what I started. The video ended. Silence. Until Leo muttered, he grew up here and never told us? Mariah stepped back, stunned. He was one of us. Lucas closed the laptop slowly, his voice firm. Then we do it. No, Aiden said. We become it. They didn't just expose the shelter. They transformed it. Mariah filed a formal case with the help of her law firm. Lucas used his media contacts to gather attention. Tessa hosted community performances with survivors sharing stories through movement. Leo created an immersive digital archive full of scanned reports, video interviews, and photos. And Aiden? He wrote. Every day, sitting on the same floor where he once laid in fear, he wrote their story. From the beginning. Not to make people cry, but to help them understand. Within weeks, their campaign exploded online. News outlets picked it up. Activists joined. Celebrities reposted. And thousands of messages poured in from others who had been through the same shelters, the same pain. Then came the final blow. The trial. Mariah stood in front of a courtroom, the 5 of them sitting in the gallery behind her. She read from one of Ryan's letters, the one addressed to the shelter's founder. You didn't just take money, she said. You took hope. But we got it back. And we're giving it to every child you ever silenced. The courtroom fell silent. Tears. Applause. Closure. But not quite. Because Ryan still hadn't come home. Even after everything, he remained missing. Until one evening, weeks after the verdict, a man walked into the rebuilt shelter. Same eyes. Same quiet strength. But older now. Slower. It was Aiden who saw him first. He didn't say a word. Just walked up and hugged him. Ryan whispered, I was afraid to come back. And Aiden replied, then it's a good thing we found you. The 5 of them stood around him. No longer kids. No longer unwanted. But something bigger. Something he had built with more than just money. He had built a family. They didn't go back to the mansion. They stayed in Winslow. Together, they turned that broken shelter into something unrecognizable. Not a reminder of pain, but a factory of healing. They called it the Cross House. Children who had been tossed away came here now and left changed. Not because they were rescued, but because they were believed in. Mariah became its legal shield. Lucas built the tech. Tessa brought in art and soul. Leo created joy clinics across cities under its name. And Aiden? He became its storyteller. The boy who once never spoke now stood in front of thousands, telling stories that made grown men weep. At the 5-year anniversary of the Cross House, they held a small ceremony in the garden. Ryan sat quietly at the back. Aiden stepped up to the mic. He looked at the crowd, then back at the man who gave him everything. I used to think we were lucky he found us, Aiden said. But now I know. He didn't save us to feel good about himself. He saved us so we'd never feel like saving ourselves was impossible. Ryan's eyes filled with tears. Aiden smiled. And maybe, just maybe, he saved himself along the way. There was no applause, just silence. The kind that happens when everyone's heart is full and their breath is stolen. Ryan looked up at the sky, then back at the 5 souls he once called unwanted. And for the first time in years, he whispered, "Thank you for choosing me back." The story didn't end there, because every child who walked through that door began their own. And this time, they were wanted from the very beginning. Sometimes, the people the world throws away are the very ones who carry the power to change it. Love doesn't fix everything overnight, but being chosen, believed in, and given a chance can heal wounds deeper than the eye can see. A family isn't always made by blood. Sometimes it's built through pain, choice, and the courage to stay. One man gave 5 unwanted children a home, but in the end, they gave him something far greater: a reason to live again.